With cyber attacks on the rise, protecting your data security is more important than ever. So why is Congress considering a bill that puts your credit card data at greater risk of being hacked and exposed to foreign networks? The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill shifts billions in consumer spending to less secure payment networks, all so that corporate megastores can make bigger profits. Don't let Durbin-Marshall steal your data. Visit electronicpaymentscoalition.org and tell your senators to oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill.
Mr. President, to Iran in this moment.
Don't.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Just a catching strays over here.
You're in for a hell of a show.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event.
Well, that was a very formidable and deterring President of the United States talking to the people of Iran, saying that they should not launch attacks on Israel. And then what, like 48 hours later, fellas?
Oh, they did.
Yeah. They did it. Well, it tells you just about all you need to know, doesn't it?
It is. It's been the same thing he's been saying since last October. You remember right after Israel was attacked, and he said to anybody who wants to take advantage of this situation, I have one word for you: don't.
Yeah, that seems
Kamala
to
Harris
be...
said the exact same thing: don't. And what have we seen out of the terrorists?
Well, I think she said don't come.
But she yeah, well, in a different context. Yeah.
And he told he told Putin don't, and he told the Taliban don't. And I think these ideas aren't separate. They don't exist in separate silos. I think the rest of the world knows this is an old man, and you can do whatever you want.
Smug, that's impossible. He told us America is back.
Right? The adults are back in charge.
The adults. Yeah. What about all the adults?
I feel very secure that there's adults called there.
You know when they have, like, there was a period of time, I don't know if this is true anymore, but back in the advent of sort of the Southern retired community, I'm thinking about like my grandparents who were like did this in like the 1980s. They would call elderly communities adult communities. Maybe that's what he meant.
Did you see when he was coming back, when he had to cut short his Rehoboth vacation or Rehoboth weekend? They flew him back, and he was walking into the White House, and it was like, because I was watching, it was like the leader of the free world returns to the White House, and he's just like shambling across, like all alone, like he's lost somewhere.
Iran is quaking.
Right. You may, if you didn't watch us last week, wonder what the clear Marylander is doing at the end of the day. Well, that's McDaniel.
Yeah.
And he's back by popular demand. It turns out people liked him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we held like an informal vote after he showed up last week and said, you know, we will beat him with like socks full of nickels and soap.
They still did. Yeah, do. Like the bruises are healing. It was great. I mean, Duncan has a real good swing on him.
I do.
Like he really does.
He does. He's a hefty gentleman.
And it comes from a place of anger, so.
Yeah. Plus, he loves a singlet. If he can put that on and give you a good beating.
I asked why he was wearing it, but like
to establish dominance. I was
dominated.
What was that move called? So, for those of you in the audience, you know that we've had a good time over the years about his fanship and his participation in wrestling. I'm talking about Duncan.
And Duncan did real wrestling, to be clear, like the actual wrestling. He was not like. This is not fixed fake matches. This is in school.
Wasn't the
actually
Undertaker? Yeah.
This was not mud,
he was not
mud
the Undertaker.
wrestling. It was not mud wrestling.
He was
beating people.
He was not
cool.
the Ultimate Warrior.
How the fuck did we get on this shit?
No, but because I think it's important that every day when I'm served some content on Instagram or something else that shows something just like, I would just say very sort of objectionable about some wrestling move that's provided on and there's a reason that they serve it to me because they think I would laugh at it and send it to you because I clearly do. You defend the practice, but there was a move that was done a couple of weeks ago. I think it was called the spladle.
Yeah, the spladle.
And I'd like you to just publicly defend it, explain it, and defend it here in the Variety program right off the top, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. Well, we're getting pretty niche here, but what happened I think it was the semifinal round of the NCAA.
It was the NCAA's. Yeah.
NCAA, tournament. This is like the national tournament to declare who's the best wrestler at each weight class in the country in college. I think it was a semifinal. The kid from Ohio State spladled his opponent, which is pretty much the most humiliating thing you can do to somebody, like in wrestling in general. But the idea you would be able to accomplish that, like at the national tournament.
just to explain, we're not going to put this on the
Yeah,
video.
I'm like, now it's a mystery. What is this? Like a suplex?
Just to explain for a minute,
no.
it's the most overtly sexual act I've ever seen.
Well,
in a sporting
I think
event.
that's more of a you problem. Like you're dealing with some stuff.
I'm dealing with stuff.
Yeah.
You're the one that's into this with the singlets and
you
everything.
see, now
else.
your assumption that somebody's into it, I think, is a personal problem. But with a spladle, you're trapping one guy's leg, and with your arm, you're trapping their other leg, and you basically force them into a humiliating split in front of the entire
And then you
crowd.
roll them on their back, and with all of their stuff out there, and that in like an addition to like just the constant face where it doesn't belong.
That is not the spladle at all.
Well, no, but there's a lot of face where it doesn't
I
belong.
feel
in
like
the
you're
sport.
kind of focused in on that. That's.
Well, it's not focused in. How do you miss it?
I don't think anybody who wrestles ever thinks about that.
Well, I think that's part of the problem, don't we?
No.
You don't. You don't
No.
think about the fact that your face is in the middle of twig and berries.
I mean, does the catcher feel like his face is next to the twig and berries? Does the
There's clear separation. It's not on his nose.
Does the center let the quarterback put his hands in his gooch?
This gives us a whole new definition, like meat up front. You know, this is
This is the meat up
this
front.
is the meat up front.
This
yeah.
is the meat up front.
I guess I'm just perfectly comfortable with
So
my
you're just-
sexuality. I guess maybe some other hosts have an issue with that
You're
sort of
just
thing.
going to defend it. You're just going to defend it.
Yeah, I'm going to fucking defend it. It's the oldest sport in the world. It's the first sport in the Olympics. The oldest profession is prostitution. The oldest sport is wrestling. We've been doing it since the Greco-Roman times.
You do have.
There it is. Oh my God.
There's the.
Oh
There's
my
the
God.
spladle.
Look at
Humiliating.
Look at what we're looking
But
at.
it's
Humiliating.
It's also like.
Why is that in sports? That has no business in sports.
It's also like the JV kind of move. Like that's.
Is it?
Well, it's like.
I mean, it looks painful.
You shouldn't get caught in that.
Yeah,
if you're at that level.
And that's my point,
That's
McDaniel.
the big thing.
Yeah, right.
It's hard to tell who's who there.
They're all wearing. There's a lot of red there.
It's the sort of thing you only like accomplish like early in the season against a very unaccomplished opponent, where you're like your buddies are in the audience and you're like, it'd be really funny if I spladled the guy.
And the biggest thing is like if you like you actually got to feel bad for the guy that's happening to, because not only was that like at the NCAA's and you're getting destroyed by a like JV move, but it's also that was actually the live stream on ESPN.
Yeah,
like it was actually on. Like the one time wrestling is ever on ESPN, and that's you getting that live
It's a
on
tough
ESPN.
look. Real tough
McDaniel,
look.
you're a spladler? I mean, you seem to have a lot
no,
of
I mean,
expertise on that.
I mean, I do jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts.
And there's so there's a spladling component to
you don't want to get spladled. Yeah,
No.
that'd be pretty bad.
It's humiliating.
Yeah, well, you're not
Yeah.
you're telling me. All right, so that's enough about wrestling for now.
For now.
But I'll come back to it
Okay.
at some point. Listen, the big news over the weekend, obviously, we're dealing with the Iran attack on Israel. You heard Biden immediately at the beginning of all this urging Iran not to respond in kind. And of course, this came from an attack on an Iranian embassy by Israel, but for a good reason. And like maybe some of the history is worth discussing before we get into what happened over the weekend.
Yeah, I saw some information like the definition of embassy was like in quotes
Yeah.
because it was essentially just like a Hamas meeting.
Yeah.
Like our foreign delegates from Hamas.
Right, which is, I mean, consistent with what we've known about Hamas and Hezbollah, in that they put a lot of their kind of central figures for strategic and planning purposes in places like schools and hospitals, and in this case, an Iranian consulate, if you will, which was hit by Israel, and Israel figures that stuff out pretty quickly. But what was so striking to me is the reaction from some that were in the pro-Hamas category, where they're like, well, he struck a consulate, and so like they had to have it coming, as though history started like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know, as if everything about what Hamas and Hezbollah, by virtue of receiving support, funding, aid, strategic guidance from Iran, hasn't been happening over the last 20 years.
Right. Well, that's certainly how the New York Times reported it, and we all know what their bias is. The reality is the Iranians shot over 100 cruise missiles. They sent 100 drones.
170.
170. Okay, you got the numbers. You know how many they shot. It wasn't like designed specifically as like something that was going to get shot down, right?
Yep.
They were hoping that some of them would get through, and some of them did get through. There was a Bedouin girl who was killed. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't strictly for show. They were trying to kill Israelis as best they could. And it turns out the Iranians just aren't as good at it as people would like to believe they could be.
So the significance of this from a listener standpoint is we've always known that Iran has used surrogates in terms of attacking Israel, and they've done it for years through Hezbollah and Hamas.
And America. That's the whole reason Trump
And
turned
America.
Soleimani into salsa. It's
Right.
because he was a member of the Iranian military specifically focused on killing American troops around the world.
That's well, he was the largest assassin of American people abroad.
Well, it's the Quds force, right? Like that's not the like internal police force of Iran. It's for exporting the revolution.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. That's the whole idea. It is the outward facing, like, heroes of the Iranian Revolution supposed to outsource it to, Lebanon and hopefully the entire world is what they're after.
That's their business model, is killing people.
Yeah, it is kind of like, well, it's not funny, but it's like there are a lot of people in like the Biden administration or the Obama administration who like deal with Iran like it's a real country, and then shit like this pops off in the Middle East, and it's like really quickly they do like an Ocean's 11 version of terrorism where like they build the band back together of like, here's the Houthis, here's Hamas, here's Hezbollah. It's like we got all these arms to Iran through through the entire Middle East, and like they're all like giving it their best shot trying to lob some missiles in.
To your point, Israel was attacked from 3 different directions: Hezbollah in the north, Iran to the east, and the Houthis in Yemen from the south.
Yeah.
And they sent 170 drones, 120 ballistic missiles, 30 cruise missiles.
Yeah.
Right? Which
Right.
is so, it's just like, look, that's what war is. Mm-hmm. That's an all-out attack. And the
Right.
significance of that from what we're talking about here and why you ought to be concerned about it is that this is the first time Iran has done it directly. Mm-hmm. This is, they
usually try to hide behind like, oh, we've got... We don't know these groups called Hezbollah who constantly hang out here.
Yeah.
Like it's on Hezbollah that they're doing these bombings and they're firing rockets and shit. But this was a direct thing, which again I think speaks to the fact that they're like, they don't care what Biden thinks. They think he's soft. They think he can't stop them, and so they are emboldened to that point of they're like, we will directly do this.
Yeah. And they have no reason not to continue to believe that. Now, the attack in and of itself, which was sort of forecasted in many ways, and you had an article you pulled up from Reuters that was basically indicating that Iran had given prior notification to at least one of our allies in the region.
Yeah, so this comes from U.S. News and World Report. It says that Iran told Turkey in advance of its operation about Israel. Turkish source says essentially they were using them as a proxy to tell the U.S., hey, we're gonna do a counterattack. This is the date. Here's how it's gonna go. And the Biden administration was essentially like, cool. That's within what the Biden administration considered. That's it's acceptable response.
It's like a referee in boxing being like, all right, gloves up and keep it clean.
Yeah.
No,
I mean that is an unconscionable response to me, although the result of this sort of contextualizes that a little bit because of everything that I just talked about. 170 drones, 120 ballistic missiles, 30 cruise missiles, 99% of all projectiles were shot down by Israel, Jordan, and U.S. fighters with advanced missile defense protection. So I guess what they thought was whatever technology was being used by Iran, we can handle it, which is what they did. What concerns me a lot is it's almost like we're dealing with like play acting here.
Yeah, so like there's
right. It's like, oh, you say, oh, you're going to do this to satisfy your extremes. We're okay with that because we think we can stop that. I mean, what?
Yeah, so
this
like
is what they're trying to kill them.
So there's this episode of The West Wing, which I always cite as why The West Wing is a comedy and not a drama.
I wish
where
I had
like
the
there's this
button.
episode where like
push a button.
where this like lib bitch of a president has, I think it was like a doctor or somebody got killed by some like country with some terrorists, and he was like, I'm going to do some real shit. And everyone's like, no, you're not. Don't do some real shit. And he's like, I'm a good lib. I'm going to do some like half-ass shit, and it's going to be like acceptable within like lib guidelines. I feel like this administration watched The West Wing. They're like, this isn't a comedy. This is a roadmap. Well, and so they're like, this is how we're going to see the world of like, this is an acceptable response. And especially if all day, so we're recording this on April 15th, which is the worst day of the year. It's tax day. And there's this famous meme. It was getting shared a lot of like, you see rockets being shot in the air. It says my tax dollars, and then, counter rockets, somehow also my tax dollars. And it's like, we have Biden being like, okay, Iran, you're good to fire these off. And then saying to Israel, okay, here's how we're going to help you counter these rockets. And it's like, this is what I'm paying for, dude? Like, how is this where my money is going? This is bullshit.
But also, this...
Like, how is this president giving the go-ahead to be like, yes, Iran, fire those rockets because, American taxpayers will pay for these jets to counter them.
Bro, they also
Get the hell out,
unfroze the billions of dollars
Bingo,
that Iran uses to fund all these terrorist groups. It's incredible.
This is the point. It's like we're mediating a conflict that we're dispassionate about.
Yeah, dude.
As if our only ally in the region is not the primary target.
Mm-hmm.
Right? As if we are somehow just trying to mitigate this dispute and trying to get things to calm down. What the fuck are we trying to get to calm down? October 7th happened. The response to it happened. The fact that they're still firing rockets into every place in Israel on the reg is happening.
And that Americans remain hostages of...
that we hope are hostages.
Yeah,
because the latest reports look as though the hostages, like, they ain't got them.
Yeah.
Like, there was this thing that came out last week where they were talking about an ultimate hostage deal where they would clear the decks on everybody that they basically took on October 7 in response to some sort of a ceasefire deal. And Hamas was like, no deal.
No deal.
And they're like, okay, well, what's the primary sticking point? And they're like, well, we ain't got them.
Yeah.
Meaning they killed these people. Like, when is that settled? I have no idea how it is that anybody's protesting ceasefire for Hamas when they just straight murdered people.
Right.
And like, folks are bringing up that, like, 1 second, like, that there was no response after this, like, engagement was going on from what's her name? From the Terror Caucus.
Ilhan Omar?
Yeah, Ilhan Omar. Nothing from Alyssa Slotkin, like the Michigan.
Or AOC?
Like, exactly. Like, the Terror Caucus was super quiet.
That's because just like Iran, they're using proxies to do their work. Did you see what happened at the Chicago O'Hare Airport on Monday morning? There was a group of Hamas sympathists who basically stopped all traffic into the airport. So if you bought a ticket for whatever airline, $1,000, $500, $300, wherever you were going to see your kids, to go get surgery, to go on vacation, to go for work, you could not get to the airport because there was a lineup of 24 Hamas sympathists blocking traffic. And I don't understand.
Gitmo.
I
called for Gitmo
I mean,
to
isn't
reopen
there a
stores.
law against that? Are you not? Isn't there a law
Well, that's
against
the
like
problem.
pedestrian
The
activity?
laws don't apply
block-
to the left.
It wasn't just that, John. Like, it was there. Like, April 15th was supposed to be a day of action. So you had the Golden Gate Bridge was shut down today. You had places all across, and they published it ahead of time. Like, and so where's the local law enforcement? But
can't we reopen Gitmo? I mean, it seems like a good time to start the. What do we have going on? Is these sound effects that we're working with? These are new sound effects. Wolf's working through some
Sounded
stuff.
like they
on
were
the
reopening Gitmo.
They reopened
Your
Gitmo.
command.
Serious.
I was gonna say, did I succeed?
there you go.
I think that's the
Holy
Gitmo
shit.
theme song.
All you had to do was ask.
That's all. It was like we have a magic button here in the program.
It's like WWE. That's Gitmo's theme song.
Can we get really serious though for just a second? Like, if Iran had its way, every Jew in the Middle East would be dead.
Yeah.
But if
And
Israel had
every
its,
American would be dead.
but if Israel had its way, every Persian would be free.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Right.
it's
Pretty much boil it down to that.
Yeah.
This is not a war between two conflicted people. This is a war between one side that wants a mass genocide of the other, and the other is like, dude, can you leave us alone?
Right.
right? And what they've done over a period, I mean, just follow the history of this. What they've done over a period of time is existential. Now, you might argue, if you're like somehow in the Hamas camp, that what Israel has done in response to being attacked over a period of 30 years exceeds the bounds of what you think is fair. You could make that argument. I wouldn't. But you could make that argument. But you can never make an argument that Israel is the one that's persecuting the region.
I mean, I just think it can be crystallized so simply as like there's one group that's chanting death to America. You know, like how much easier can the decision be made? And the fact that, I mean, when I heard that news, that the Biden administration through a proxy was like, yeah, you know, how about a proportionate response, Iran? It's like, are you for real, dude? Like, all these, like, fighter jets that the U.S. is sending, cruise missiles and shit that we're paying for because you're turning this into a pantomime, man. Like, there are Americans who were kidnapped. Like, what the hell is wrong with you, dude?
Terrible president. The guy needs to be defeated.
Well, and just to put a little bit more meat on that bone, Axios had an article, U.S. urges Israel to be careful and strategic regarding response to Iran attack. A day after the unprecedented Iranian attack on Israel, the Biden administration continues to urge Israel in private and public not to rush to a massive retaliation. Is that our role here?
It's insane. So, like, part of what I am extremely shocked and surprised by in the aftermath of the attacks in October is that Biden didn't send like a team of Navy SEALs to go get the Americans, because like in the Trump administration, you know, everyone remembers Hero Dog, like terrorist bodies were hitting the ground. Like, you knew you cross America, who knows what Trump's going to do? You'll end up dead. You just don't know how he's going to do it, right?
Yeah.
So that's why you didn't see them acting up. There was no issue that's popping off like this during the Trump administration. It's like partially, you know, like madman theory, like Nixon had of like, you don't know what this guy's going to do. You don't want to try him, right?
We all forgot like how incredible that killing of al-Baghdadi was. They didn't go through the front door. They blew out a wall, and they sent in dogs with goggles on and a robot to kill him. To kill that guy, who is a monster, like was a monster, and he deserves everything. And then Trump made fun of him for crying.
Yeah. and he tweeted this like ultra low res American flag dude. Like,
oh, that was so
we
great.
used to be a real country, man.
Dude. And also, you have to imagine that Trump is watching all of this in the sit room, real time. He's like, "Can we get a robot,
bro?" Like,
any chance we get a
robots and
robot?
dogs are killing terrorists while he's cracking a Diet Coke.
Yeah,
it's like, and my word is law.
Let's throw some stuff.
We do not have this picture loaded into the system, but he also tweeted a picture of the Belgian Malinois who went in and took him.
Oh,
you remember this?
Yeah,
and he was like, "Good boy."
Conan.
Conan the dog.
Just such a great moment.
Completely.
The dog had his tongue hanging out of the side of his mouth.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like, you know, from the beginning of time, and especially I feel in the Middle East, the only thing that's respected is strength.
I mean, Holmes, you might know this. I mean, when you get to the Situation Room level, is the like kill order made by the president? So is it like the president has a range of options in front of him? That's one is snipers. The other one is
Robot dogs.
The other one is, you know, the SEAL Team 6, and the other one is send the dogs.
Yeah, right.
No,
Yeah.
no, I don't want to use our soldiers. Let's send that. That's a very cute dog. Send the dog in.
Well, it all comes back to like his decision within the first month to do the Moab.
Yeah.
Remember, it was the acronym "Mother of All Bombs," and like clearly the reason that he did that, because I don't think there was like a strategic value associated with it, but he was like, let's see what this does.
It's a psychological value. Like, I remember the footage came out, and every Taliban in Afghanistan was like, well, shit.
Right.
I guess we don't come out of the caves right now.
Right. Like, you better dig that cave a little deeper.
Yeah,
But it was also a message to the rest of the world, and specifically China, right? It was like, America is going to do what it takes to kill the threats.
And this is the
that it
opposite of
has.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the exact opposite of that. This is, we're concerned about escalating an attack on one of our allies to the point where we're telling our allies, I don't care if you have a Scud missile sent into your doorstep, like, calibrate.
Yeah.
Calibrate. Since when do we calibrate? Like, can you imagine if you would have told the American people post 9/11, like, we just need to be careful about how we respond to this.
Yeah.
But let's imagine North Korea launched something at Hawaii, and we're really good. DARPA, whatever, shoots it down. Are we really just going to be like, oh, you guys, you crazy scamps?
Under this administration?
Well, is that the policy now? Because Israel now is a victim of its own success. So should Israel just let's let a few of these get through in order to justify actually having a response?
Well, they even have a thing, and I don't know if this is shorthanded, the media shorthanded, or if it's an actual quote, but they talk about Biden suggesting they should pocket the win. Pocket the win.
You mean Biden, who's been wrong on every major foreign policy decision for the last 40 years, according to Robert Gates?
Pocket the win. You get attacked and you stop most of it, so that's a win. Congratulations, Israel. You got a hell of an ally. I mean, we need to change over here faster than we can get to the election. I can tell you that much. All right, so we got a big show. We're going to have a lot more fun with you. Will Cain is here on the program. We did his show a few weeks ago, had a blast, and figured we'd have him back. Sports guy now, Fox News guy. I think you're going to love every minute of that.
It was so fun. Even I showed up.
Yeah. Rare.
It was fun as hell.
We're going to talk about on NPR has responded to the thing that we talked about last week about you do the
Uri.
the Berliner thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Uri Berliner.
Yeah.
Ich bin Uri Berliner.
That's it. That's it. He had some criticism about only Democrats working in the mainstream media, and they've now responded to that, and Smug's going to take that. Trump trial, obviously a big deal, focusing all of the media attention, so we're going to touch on that briefly.
And then we also have our Hack Madness champion to announce.
And then we have some Hack Madness news that we're going to get to right after the break.
Americans for Prosperity has done it again. You're going to love this. Know how Biden's been running around the country bragging about Bidenomics? And the media's doing stories on how the president has embraced the term? Well, guess what? Americans for Prosperity just bought the Bidenomics.com domain name. I can't believe the White House didn't get this first. This would be like Pepsi buying Coca-Cola.com. It's hilarious. Bidenomics.com sets the record straight on the failures of Joe Biden's economy, his horrible record on cost of living, wages, debt, deficits, energy, and more. I've been to the site. I can tell you, it's not what Joe Biden wants Americans to see. AFP takes Biden's own words and compares them to the reality of everyday Americans. It's packed with facts and stories that prove Bidenomics is a costly failure. Americans for Prosperity deserves a lot of credit for this coup. Visit Bidenomics.com soon, the website Joe Biden doesn't want you to see.
Okay, so Smug, people say that the best thing we do on the variety program is Hack Madness.
Yeah.
Which, for those of you who don't follow along, it's a 66 team, because there's two play-in games, but 66 of the worst journalists in all of America are chosen deliberately by a selection committee each and every year to compete in a tournament called Hack Madness.
That's right. It's the most important tournament that occurs during March. Essentially, it's called Hack Madness because these are, quote, journalists, right? You're covered with like a plethora of left-wing hacks. And, I mean, this is the 5th annual Hack Madness tournament, right? We have had Jen Rubin go back-to-back. We had Brian Stelter win the first one. So, like, these are some, like, serious hacks.
Yeah, right? Lorenz was the reigning champ.
Yeah, Taylor Lorenz, and that was part of the story. Is she made it to the Final Four? She got knocked out. So the championship match was Jen Psaki versus Keith Olbermann, and folks, I mean, it was Keith Olbermann took it this year.
Keith Olbermann took it, and there's a range of reaction on the dais.
Yeah,
for this. Our resident journo, John Ashbrook, your initial thoughts?
I'm somebody who watched a lot of Keith Olbermann growing up on SportsCenter before he was political, or before I knew he was political, and I really liked what he had to say on SportsCenter.
Don't you dare humanize him.
Yeah.
This is outrageous.
And I took,
of course he would.
And I took Jen Psaki to win the whole thing. Because I thought this was going to be her
I thought
year.
You said Ben Smith. You said was the biggest hack. I thought you had Ben Smith.
Smug often likes to put words into my mouth, but that's just not true. I took Jen Psaki to win this thing because she's now front and center on TV, and she made fun of people from Virginia who thought that the border was a problem.
Yep.
and she came up short because.
Well, it carried you a long way. She got a hell of a lot further than I thought she would.
Yeah, and I think I scored higher than anybody else on the dais in my Hack Madness.
Hey,
choices.
you know, Journos, those Georgetown cocktail parties, they
I
pay
know
off.
I
So
know the audience, more
we
importantly.
did an internal balloting on this. Smash won it.
Yeah,
On
everyone
the
filled out their
Ruthless
bracket
bracket.
sheets, and Ashbrook won it.
Yeah, and Duncan got a distant last.
Yeah, well, we talked about this on the show last week, but I had Mika going deep.
I know, but I
really
like
thought-
talking about your failures. So if we can like reiterate that.
I mean, I won it last year. What the hell are you talking about? Fucking ridiculous. I mean, the attacks on me today.
You got spladled. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I think this is this championship to me came down to a theme that we've been talking about, which is like getting hot at the right time. You know, folks in the NCAA tournament, you saw State getting hot at the right time. I think Keith Olbermann is the same story. He had this tweet where he was like, he said something like his tears are urine, right? Which is like, yeah, okay.
I mean, look,
You say that on the internet, it's gonna get some attention.
Keith did get hot. He did get hot. But I am renewing my call for some sort of blood testing before we can formally declare him champion. This is not the enhanced
you think
games.
This is a Baffert thing? You think he was a little bit?
I think he was a junkie horse.
he got milkshaked.
I think he got milkshaked.
How?
I don't know. I wouldn't like to speculate. I mean, you know, McDaniel's our lawyer, and I don't think he'd appreciate that.
Allegedly, allegedly.
Many people are
allegedly. Many people are saying. No, I mean, just to say that we need drug testing in Hack Madness, that's certainly not defamation.
Okay.
We just don't want to say who we need to drug test and why.
Sure.
Well,
Sure.
Look, I'm merely suggesting that the man... The man went off the rails. If that's natural, then I'm Barry Bonds.
I mean, he also, that's a good point. He did, like, he had some take of, like, the Supreme Court needs to be, like, deposed and, like...
No, I mean,
But you can't keep up with that. If you're
You
Jen
can't.
Psaki, you can have a show on MSNBC. You can't keep up with that kind of lunacy, and I think that's why he
Yeah.
won.
The people voted. We had, like, over 500,000 votes.
This
Yeah.
is what I struggle with, because when we put these things together, people come from a range of media outlets, and you're familiar with the worst actors.
Yeah.
And but you're also familiar with household names like Keith Olbermann. Like Keith Olbermann doesn't have a platform. Like, I don't know who he speaks to on a day-to-day basis, but there's like 12 people in their underpants, like listening to it and doing unspeakable things to themselves. Like that's basically
I don't know why are you going to cast aspersions like that? I mean, maybe people are doing that to our show right now.
If you're doing unspeakable versions, well, no, I'm going to take it back. I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to stop. And
Oh, but
I'm going to move on.
But people like the filth.
Well,
Yeah.
before
We did.
Suddenly, Holmes is a prude.
No, I had an idea, but I'm reserving it because I just don't. I don't want to see that.
Before we move to the next topic, we do need to all tip the cap to Horse Sense, who put this together
That's right.
online.
Yeah.
And
Shout out to Horse
yeah.
Sense on Twitter/X who put these brackets together. Millions filled out brackets. It was I think they got like over 500
Oh,
bracket
yeah.
sheets. It was huge.
Yeah,
huge.
and we joke internally about who won among us, but none of us hold a candle to the top minions.
No,
I mean,
the minions
Casey,
crushed it.
I mean, killed
Danny
it.
H, Till I See God. These guys were just crushing.
yeah, they knew it.
Completely killed
Yeah.
it. Thank you for all the submissions. We love it as always. We'll be back again next year with another version. At the end of every one, we always say, like, we need to emphasize something other than the other. In the last couple of years, we've said we need to emphasize print journalism. I think Phil Bump was the embodiment
Yep.
of the work that we've
Yeah,
done
no,
on
that's
that,
true.
Totally.
making it
Yep.
all the way through the semis. So it seems to me like we're making progress on this. Is Keith Olbermann my champion? Certainly not, but he's the people's champion,
it.
and that's what we go with.
That's right.
I love it. Okay, so in that vein, we turn to another journalism controversy.
Yeah.
Smug. And this is the one that you have sunk your teeth into in terms of the response. You recall last week we covered Berliner, who was an NPR employee for 25 years, that said that he sort of worked within the organization, found 87 registered Democrats, 0 registered Republicans, that everything had sort of become unglued, and the mainstream media basically was what you think it is.
Yeah.
Right? Is that a fair assessment?
That's fair. And so he was like, the conditions at NPR, they've gone this far left. This explains why so many people have lost their faith in modern journalism. And he did it at the Free Press, which is, I believe, it's Barry Weiss's outlet. It's really good, worth reading, worth checking out. In the aftermath of that, so I want to tell like a little bit of a story. So occasionally I was checking Twitter this previous weekend, and folks were posting screenshots and links to these like tweets from this incredibly unhinged woman. Like, these are some of the like worst tweets you've ever seen. Spaghetti, could I get... Oh, boy, God, there's such a selection to choose from. I think the brother one first. Could I get graphic number 7?
We're up to 7.
Yeah, so this says...
7!
Or graphic number 7 says, my 30-year-old brother listening to NPR on reactions to the new Ghostbusters, quote, white men, we really are pretty much the problem these days.
Oh, yeah.
What?
Okay, so this is an unhinged person, right? And then this is graphic 6. Can we get graphic 6? Graphic 6 says, I know that hysteric white woman voice. I was taught to do it. I've done it. It's a disturbing recognition. While I don't recall ever using it to deliberately expose another person to immediate physical harm on my own cognizance, it's not impossible. That is whiteness.
What is she even talking about?
I don't even get,
So,
like, that's a bizarre
that's the thing is,
formulation.
so if you're seeing this, you're like,
I
okay.
understand the danger of a white woman screaming, by the way. That's not what I'm objecting to. That is not what I'm objecting to.
so, like,
just danger?
But before you get into your analysis, can I just raise the timestamp here? This is 4:08 a.m.
Yeah.
Oy.
in May of 2020 during COVID.
Yeah.
Everybody at this in May still thought it was like Ebola. And at 4:08 a.m., this is what she's tweeting?
Yeah.
And now she's the head of NPR? Get out of here.
Well, that was the whole spoiler I tried to do for
well,
Ashbrook ruined it.
look
This
what-
unhinged woman is actually the CEO of NPR, and she's actually Ashbrook's best friend.
the entire build of the entire segment.
Yeah.
And he just takes a piss
Yeah.
all over his legs.
Someone get this guy a Werther's.
You were taking too long,
Yeah.
Smug. People already knew.
No.
They've been reading the news. They know who this
Smug,
is.
I'm
So
on your
this is
side. You were
just-
doing it with pageantry. I appreciated that.
Yeah, well, you know, some people like a good show. So
And that's what I just gave them.
this individual, Catherine Mayer, is the CEO of NPR, taxpayer-funded NPR. So the person calling the shots at this organization, which you had a former reporter write, this is a far-left organization. This is why people have lost faith in news. The person calling the shots there is like to the left of the squad and is completely unhinged. And you see her Twitter feed. Not only is it loony, but like you see the latest ones are like, in late March, I am proud to take over NPR. So it's like National Public Radio is in the hands of an absolute lunatic.
Can I get graphic 3 up there? This is my personal favorite. This is again amidst all of COVID. And graphic 3 is just so perfect for me. It starts with her talking about
This is the summer of love.
how
The riots.
CNN is talking about the tragedy of damage to iconic retail zones and shoe stores in LA. And then she's got a thread where she said, I mean, sure, looting is counterproductive. Sure. I mean, hey, listen, I think you have a little something.
It's just counterproductive.
I like counterproductive.
It's counterproductive.
It's not that it's a crime.
Yeah.
No, it's just counterproductive.
I mean, a police officer was burned alive in a store. It's a little counterproductive.
But it's hard to be mad about protests not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression founded of treating people's ancestors as private property. Unfucking believable.
Like, right?
What a banger.
The
What
takes
a
here.
banger.
Like, this would be like, she would never be a contestant on King of the Hill because we would never have
No,
another
no.
champion.
I'm
Again.
not done. Put it
no,
back
no.
up.
Yeah,
Hold
keep going,
on.
keep going.
Hold
Keep
on.
There's more.
No. Also, this is my
Isn't this
favorite.
nuts,
This
dude?
is the best.
This is really unhinged.
Also, reporting on extinguished shoe store fires is just lazy reporting.
Yeah. It's a mostly peaceful shoe store blaze.
Once again, I'd like to direct your attention to the timestamp here, 2:11 a.m.
Oh,
on
Jesus.
May 31st, which is typically Memorial Day weekend.
I mean, this is not. This person is in charge of the.
And it goes,
The
so
news?
the last tweet in the thread, I mean, it's just like the icing on the cake. In parentheses, also to be clear, I'm not conflating provocateurs with protesters. Instead, saying this should not be the thing anyone sheds tears over. Cheesecakes are insured. The right to be black and breathe is without measure.
Oh my God! I just like what. It's so
insane.
we will look back on this.
So for the audience, can we put up graphic one just while you talk it through? They need a picture of this lady.
Yes.
And I think graphic one just gives the audience.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
McDaniel, and will you explain why it's a good one? What's the hat she's wearing, McDaniel?
I think that's a Joe Biden for president hat. But I really wasn't focused on the hat. I was focused on the 60% of her face that's covered by a mask outside in the year of our Lord.
Well, that was the
2020.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. In November of 2020.
And she has a mask on her current profile as well. We're talking about in 2024.
Dude, it's not that she's just wearing a Biden hat.
Here's the thing. She's a volunteer on the field program to elect him as president of the United States, and now she expects taxpayers to fund her organization that she runs to provide information for people. And the reality is that NPR does not deserve another dime.
She's
of
out there
taxpayer
literally
dollars.
doing GOTV for Joe Biden,
Right.
and now they're like, that
Right.
makes you the CEO of NPR.
There is nothing unbiased about an organization that is run by someone who is GOTV for Joe Biden and then takes a shit all over the guy who's like, hey, maybe we should be more balanced. Who's like, hey, I grew up a lib, but maybe we should have different viewpoints on our radio show.
You know, I think
Get out of here.
I'm blown away by it. You know why I'm blown away by this, boys? Is that if any of us in any of our day jobs, not here on the Ruthless Friday program, if any of our day jobs were to be that far outside the lines, we would be network news ourselves.
Yep.
And the fact that they can do it from the confines of a nationally public radio, federally funded operation and be like, I don't see what the controversy is here, blows me away.
What's wild to me is there are people who work at NPR who are doing their best
Here we
to
go.
try to be unbiased. And every single
to this.
phone call they make, every person is going to say, I'm sorry, but your CEO is a grassroots volunteer for the Joe Biden, so why should I return your call?
Can I make one important point? Can we go back to graphic 7, talking about her brother? So she said, I have to read it again. My 30-year-old brother listening to NPR on reactions to the new Ghostbusters, quote, white men, we really are pretty much the problem these days. Your brother's a bitch. Like, that's tough.
To be clear, was she
Is
talking
that why
about...
you're radicalized?
Do you think like the ghost?
did
Hold
that
on,
do
I
it?
want to see it.
Wait,
Can we
what
get
is
7? Do you have 7?
What does it have to do with Ghostbusters?
Like,
So that was Ghostbusters
That's what
2016.
Are we talking about the Marshmallow Man?
No. They're talking about Ghostbusters 2016 that they rebooted with an all really terrible female
it was
cast.
super woke.
And it was
Well,
like
that existed. I didn't know that existed.
yeah, no, it was terrible.
You're
Probably
telling
because
me
you're a
this-
normal
You're
human.
telling me this for the first time.
so they brought
The only people who watched it were like 4 Looney Tunes.
in. So that was the reboot before this most recent reboot. But they brought in 4 female comedians who were just not funny. And it was just the biggest bomb, but it became like this culture war issue.
of course, as
And-
everything does now.
And so it was. You had the right wingers who were like, yeah, this is just garbage. It's nothing like the original Ghostbusters. And then you had the left being like flagellating themselves, saying, yes, this is so good. I love this new Ghostbusters, and it's just garbage. This is absolute trash. So
Thank you for the context
Yeah.
on that. I thought she was literally talking about the Marshmallow Man,
Right.
who is a white menace, no question about it.
I think
we can all take a stand against the white menace and take a stand against the Marshmallow Man.
Look, dude, I think
very funny.
I think this is obviously absurd. But I think it's an important time capsule into that period of time in America.
I totally agree with what you're about to say.
You know,
I know
like,
what you're going to say.
and I don't know if it was just COVID or if it was COVID and Trump, or maybe just Trump and then also the BLM riots and all of this sort of stuff. But like, what the communists did in China, you know, with the revolution in China, pales in comparison to what happened to the brain of a liberal American in the year of our Lord 2020. Like
man.
the internet became a struggle session for all of these people, not just her, but if you went back and looked at so many
the
people,
craziest shit people have ever
Craziest
thought
shit.
we're in that time period.
Right. It just became this performative act of just like having to deny like who you are and blame whiteness and blame privilege and all of these sort of things. And that's an artifact that it carries on to this present day. But in that period of time in 2020, it became this performance, this theater we lived in.
Can I give a counterpoint? So that tweet, the whiteness one, was from 2016, and it gets even better in 2016. This is regarding Hillary. She says, I do wish Hillary, this is October 2016, I do wish Hillary wouldn't use the language of, quote, boy and girl. It's erasing language for non-binary people. Like, these are the takes she's been dropping for almost 10 years, right? And, like, then she goes on, this is the context of NPR's new CEO denounced claims from a senior editor that the outlet has, quote, lost America's trust, calling the comments made in an op-ed, quote, disrespectful and hurtful. His comments were, NPR is like being run by left-wing people, and she's like, that's disrespectful.
And he was like, and I'm a left-winger.
So I appreciate that her solution. Like, imagine like they said to a left-winger, you don't have a diverse enough staff, right? And at NPR, they're like, well, I mean, if, let's say we don't have enough African Americans, they would immediately go out and start hiring, right? Uri Berliner comes out and says, you have 87 Democrats and 0 Republicans. And her response is,
you're disrespectful.
Hurtful. Questioning whether our people are serving our mission with integrity based on little more than recognition of their identity is profoundly disrespectful.
It's all of a sudden integrity has something to do with it.
So her response is, you can't really be talking about identity when it's about politics.
Yeah. I would like to show you the picture of integrity.
That's
picture
game.
of integrity in news in graphic number 4. And I apologize to people who are listening because you can't see this. It's another picture of the CEO of NPR in her Biden-Harris volunteer T-shirt doing GeoTV with the tagline, Arizona, let's do this. So she is more of a volunteer for Joe Biden than most of the people listening to this have ever been for any Republican.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a straight up like.
Our listeners need to step up. You need to be like the CEO of NPR and get out there and support Republican candidates.
You need to drop some wild right wing takes. You need to get out there and volunteer, and then take over a news organization. Like, this is the state of things for her to then come out and be like, wow, how dare you claim we're left wing?
Oh, but Ronna McDaniel can't be a contributor at MSNBC.
At
NBC.
Yeah,
but the Biden-Harris person can be CEO of NPR.
You've forgotten about the Marshmallow Man, McDaniel. That is a very important thing to consider. All right, so the other thing that everybody else is dealing with, which if you are still a consumer of mainstream news, which unfortunately there are a few of us that still exist, the only thing you're going to see from now until eternity are Trump trials. And the first one in New York is beginning, according to the Wall Street Journal. Donald Trump will become the first former president to sit for a criminal trial when he appears in New York court Monday, kicking off a highly unusual stretch in which the Republican will campaign for a new term while defending himself against accusations that he directed an illegal scheme to pay off a porn star. They just love wedging porn star. It doesn't matter the publication. If you can get porn star in there, they're all about
Yeah,
that.
it helps with SEO, I'm sure.
We should really have a game where we come up with that, but you have to wedge in as much as you can. I'm surprised they didn't wedge in January 6th.
Yeah.
That's surprising that they didn't.
Jan 6 would have been good, but it's the Wall Street Journal, so
that's fair.
it is a little bit more of an integrity there. The case against the people versus Donald Trump itself is a mixed bag with the lowest stakes of the 4 prosecution he faces. Interesting. Trump will have no mandatory prison term if convicted, despite the salacious backstory. despite the salacious backstory and the case at its core,
despite the fact that he's guilty
of documents, whether Trump falsified the business and financial records that accounted for the hush money. Still, the case is being brought by the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, may be the only one of Trump's criminal cases to wrap up before Election Day. So I'm immediately just reminded of the very quality interview that we did with Andrew McCarthy about all of this.
Yeah.
Where he highlighted this one in particular for, I think, pretty much what was summarized in the first 3 paragraphs of that Wall Street Journal. This is the one that is probably going to be litigated one way or another. It is also one, as he recalled, as being dismissed by federal prosecutors.
because this is a joke. This
Is
is
not
absurd.
having the there, and picked up by, once again, another guy here who's campaigned on taking down Trump, like Letitia James.
Yep.
And moved forward in the court system to the point where you can only imagine what the jury looks like. They're now in jury selection, and the chances of him getting a free and fair trial despite the evidence, I gotta say, look, I've been a critic of a lot of things that Trump has done in this area, but it just doesn't seem like a fair trial.
This is this is certainly the one case. If you had to pick one case to have to go to trial, if you're Donald Trump, this is the one. This was a trial, like you alluded to, that was, they denied the ability to prosecute at DOJ. Cy Vance in New York was like, no, I don't think we can.
Yep.
And so now a crime that I guess would be an FEC, a Federal Election Commission crime, is now being prosecuted in state court in New York.
Correct. This is
It's like,
So it's worse than that. So what he's being charged with are typically misdemeanors.
yeah.
Right. So there has to be.
And they've escalated all.
Well, it has to be escalated by in furtherance of another crime or act, which in this case they're saying is the FEC violation.
The crime that would refuse to be prosecuted.
Right. But that's the reason why that upped it to a felony, because this is almost never charged in New York as a felony.
So, but doesn't it remind you an awful lot of the Colorado case that went before the Supreme Court and got the 9-0, in that they threw him off the ballot because of his guilt over inciting an insurrection that no federal prosecutor had not only not proven, but never brought in the first place. Right? So they're like weaving together jurisdictions that have nothing to do with the court case that they're bringing, but using the weight of it to try to bring what would be a misdemeanor or something else into a felony level, and then doing it multiple occasions. I think it's like 41 counts or something like that.
And I can tell you, this is why.
Okay.
It says in this article, Trump is required to attend the trial. That means he will spend 4 days a week seated at the defense table instead of campaigning.
See, I don't think that's actually a problem.
That's it.
Honestly,
I think he likes it.
Like I get what the Democrats think they're doing here. Donald Trump's going to raise hand over fist money off of this court case. And the idea, I think, that people don't know who Donald Trump is and Joe Biden is and what they stand for. I mean, this might be a presidential election in which actual campaigning means the least. I don't know if that speaks really good about the state of our democracy, but I think that is a functional reality of having a rematch of two candidates who ran against each other last time. So ultimately, I don't think that will matter for Donald Trump's campaigning. I think it's probably going to end up being a net positive when it comes to the amount of money he's going to need to run a campaign.
Let me just add, Michael, that President Trump is not the only one who's raising money hand over fist at this trial. Let me read to you from the Daily Mail that while campaigning to become the next Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, PAC associated with Alvin Bragg, received $1 million in support from Hungarian-born billionaire financier turned American mega donor George Soros.
Oh, I'm shocked.
Oh, weird. George Soros is somehow
So of course there's
involved?
left-wing dark money behind it.
If you're wondering why New York? Why is
catch.
this happening in New York?
He's been so good for law and order in this country.
Gosh, I know. He's been, like, his
catch,
view of
Ashford.
prosecution has been terrific, hasn't it?
It is so funny. Like he wants to elect all these left-wing prosecutors who don't charge crimes. The only person he's interested in putting in prison is Donald Trump.
Yeah.
It's literally it.
Finally, George Soros is going to be tough on crime.
Yeah, it's like you drive your car through a parade of families, no problem. Send him out. Should be out on bail. You're a former Republican president, lock his ass.
Lock him up.
That's their whole MO.
So, from a legal standpoint, legal/political standpoint, this is actually, if we're looking game planning out, if Donald Trump is going to have to go to trial on one of these cases, this is definitely the best one to go first.
Of course.
Because not only is it a sham, like even if he's like Duncan, I know you've said before, if he's convicted, it doesn't matter because they're going to run ads convicted Donald Trump. You know what, folks? Donald Trump's probably going to get convicted in this because you have a Manhattan jury.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that I'm skeptical. I kind of agree in that what McCarthy laid out was like, look, you're just not going to get a fair trial here.
Yeah.
At which which resonates. And then we watched what happened in the civil case, and that was definitely the case there.
Right.
Like there was absolutely no evidence that he did what he did.
When every bank he borrows from was like, he paid us back on time. We want to loan him more.
Yeah. So like I agree with that, but I just
No, I mean, for the audience, like it doesn't essentially mean, we're not saying like, oh yeah, he's definitely guilty, all that sort of stuff. No, I mean, when this stuff is being brought to trial, actually Trump's lawyers in New York are pretty good. They've tried a couple times to get this judge kicked off the case. They've tried a couple times to do interlocutory appeals, which are good, which are kind of slowing down. Their job needs to be to slow this down as long as humanly possible. And Trump's other lawyers have really succeeded. So the ones who are defending the DOJ lawsuits have succeeded.
And the Georgia thing.
And Georgia have really succeeded in slowing it down. This one has not gotten slowed down. Mm-hmm. The most likely scenario is, I mean, you're going to have jurors in the box. Manhattan's 85, 90% Democrat.
They want to ring them up no matter what?
Right. I mean, you're going to have folks in the box who are ready to convict. Now, the big question is, do they convict on the felonies? Do they convict on the misdemeanors? There's a chance that Trump's kind of argument is, kind of just going after the felonies, going after the underlying, the escalation in that. But realistically, if you're a betting guy, this is going to have to be a conviction and that you get overturned on appeal, which is a problem politically because you still get to run the ad
and
convicted
that piece
criminal
of it,
Donald Trump.
The appeal would be far after. Voters.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean,
probably.
I mean, in the normal course, this stuff it would be a year.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's a big thing. But look, I think another little turn in this story that I find so amusing, fellas. I find this so amusing. There's nothing that the media has been more focused on than the Republican Party picking up legal bills for the Trump campaign, and then having PACs associated with Trump picking up legal bills.
And then Joe Biden tweeting out, "At least you don't pay my legal bills." Remember, like he's like, "No one pays my legal bills."
No, I mean they really put a finger on it. Like they're trying to make that a big part because they're trying to discourage donors from participating in the Republican process because they're like, "Oh, your money doesn't actually go to campaigns to elect Republicans. All it does is go to pay legal bills." You can make your arguments for that one way or another, but according to the Associated Press, Democratic donors have paid more than $1 million for Joe Biden's legal bills for a special counsel probe.
Whoa. I'm shocked. I was assured he had that all buttoned up.
I thought we were all Democratic donors covered more than $1 million in legal fees racked up by attorneys representing Joe Biden in a year-long special counsel probe into his handling of classified documents. So this is we're not even talking about the impeachment thing, which is like an inherent political activity of which political committees at some level do play a role in. I mean, it's always a conversation, but if there's something as a political prosecution, like they're happening under the dome, this happens more times than it doesn't. But what they're talking about is the classified documents case. This has nothing to do with what Jamie Comer and everybody else is getting into. The use of party funds to cover Biden's legal bills is not without precedent and falls within the bounds of campaign finance law. It does, but it really doesn't.
I mean, those accusations aren't from when he was president of the United States. These are back when he allegedly took classified documents as senator. As senator.
Yes!
Right. Well, my question was just like, I got really confused with the article because was it for paying the lawyers to defend Biden, or was it paying the lawyers who actually represented the DOJ who support him just to make the cases go away?
Well,
no. We're paying them. Taxpayers are paying them.
We're paying both sides.
The other
again,
side's a
somehow my
bipartisan
tax
deal.
money. It's a meme again. Somehow also my tax money.
It's the missiles.
But this is not reporting from the Ruthless Variety Program, as reliable as we may be. It actually comes from the Associated Press.
Yeah, it does.
So if the Associated Press is hitting Joe Biden on something, it must be real.
Well, I mean, the money for the Biden's legal team came from the Democrat National Committee's legal account, according to people. And the legal account,
Different
for those
limits.
of you who understand, there is a legal account that has different limits, a higher limit. So you can contribute up to a certain amount, and then there's a legal fund that allows you to do.
God bless the lawyers. They do such hard work.
Well, I mean, this is like the beauty of the campaign finance system that was built by John McCain and Russ Feingold. Right? Is that you can't just, there's no like accounting of money and like we all just make our decisions based on the transparency of it. It's like, no, that's the legal account. The legal account. I mean, go fuck yourself. Go the legal account.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the account is primarily funded by high dollar donors who've already met federal contribution limits for political activities. So presumably they're like terrific with this whole idea, and I can only imagine that that's in the AP because they wanted to be very transparent about not using the campaign dollars.
So I can tell you why it was in the AP, and there's a line that got cut for the production document, but they needed to have they had a paragraph in there saying, and Trump does this too, and Trump has this problem, and Trump. So they wouldn't only cover it for Biden.
But I don't think it's the case. We'll actually have to go back and look. I do not think it is the case that the documents case, that a single dollar of the documents case against Donald Trump has been funded by the party. I do not think that that is the case, which is a significant difference in my view.
Yeah.
All right. So we got some variety. You guys want some variety?
Always.
Oh, this one hits hard right off the top. And I don't. It's according to the Daily Star.
Oh boy.
Most people want to have sex with robots. A new robosexuality study reveals.
Come on.
We had to include it for the robosexuality.
So wait,
The word "most" is doing an awful lot of work there.
but also, you know when you get polls when they're like, this candidate leads, and it's like according to a study by their own campaign. Robosexuality feels like they might have they might be in on that.
You think they got a thumb on the scale?
I feel like if they have a dog in that race, it's robots having sex with people.
Is that represented on the flag with the triangle and the colors?
Oh my God.
We don't. You know what? I don't know.
They got like a circuit board up there now.
Yeah, no, it's
Cool.
maybe it should be a gray or a metallic silver or something like that, like sort of a C-3PO or like
They deserve representation. I mean, this.
Right.
So
It's implied by the plus.
So this is the thing is, this is insanity, right? So there was this show on HBO. It was good for one season, Westworld, where it was like, oh, there's robots, and it's like the Wild West. And basically, what ends up happening is people would show up and they'd either like be like, okay, I could ride a horse and just like shoot a bunch of robots like that look just like people. So it's basically like paintball but with real guns, and you're like, oh, get it out of your system. And then half the people would also just like go to a brothel, right? So I was like, this would be rad if you could just show up to a theme park and shoot, like, it's like, Mickey and shit, right? But they're robots and you can gun them down.
Wait a minute.
Where the fuck are we going?
Wait,
with this?
just
Smug really likes Minnie Mouse. Is where we're going.
So you get, no, wait, hold. But that's the thing is like, wait, the choice to take it in that direction of like, I don't want any consequences of being like, I want to shoot the robot, but to turn it into like, no, I want to bang the robot. I don't think robosexuality is a thing. It's a problem. This is another example of mental health crisis being turned into like an identity. You're not a robosexual.
You went really
you got
deep.
problems.
You went really deep.
Yeah,
on
I don't
this.
think there's anything wrong with shooting the robot. I think there's something wrong with wanting to bang it.
Would you bang a robot?
No, I'd shoot one. That's the thing. It's like paintball, except with real guns. So it'd be cool. You could gun down. It's like heli hogging. You get in a helicopter, you gun down a bunch of hogs, you help the farmers.
I'm not.
Terrible.
The thread is.
Do you
lost.
think our society is going to get to a place where they're trying to confer actual rights to robots?
That's the problem. Is because I think we should have the right to gun them down, but they don't have any rights to not get gunned down because they're robots.
Right.
I love that you've turned this into an act of violence.
Well, that's the show. It was the show.
So,
Blame the show.
Well, I mean, they're talking about so you'll be displeased to find out that new research has revealed who would most likely be interested in having sex with robots.
Yep.
Technology has moved on in leaps and bounds from the days of blow-up dolls to realistic sex robots, which have been, quote-unquote, built to satisfy. While a few have made their way onto the market, development continues to improve on what's available. Along with the vast shifts towards looking realistic, investing in a new sex aid has never been easier. For the shy folks who didn't relish the idea of strolling into a store and pulling one down off the shelf, internet shopping has put pay to that awkward encounter. So people don't have to actually like have a retail experience. They can just order it direct to home, which, by the way, the box should have some kind of disclaimer, right? Like, we have a fuck bot.
No,
here.
it'll be in just discreet boxing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, right.
Well, come on.
Wouldn't
It's
you have to
gonna
like
be
go to your
it's-
neighbor's house and be like, I'm on a
exercise
list of robosexuals? Like,
the box is going to be gigantic.
That's exercise equipment. You know, you can play it off.
I mean, can you imagine they got like Johnny Five wrapped up in a box and he just pops out and just starts ready for action?
So I'm gonna say though, in defense of robosexuals,
Johnny
Do you remember
Five.
that?
Hold on.
Short
hold on.
circuit.
Shorts with great
I
movie.
want to hear this in defense.
McDaniel just said in defense of robosexuals.
in defense.
Okay. Oh,
So
wow.
no, I think we're getting to a point when you look at these, look at the development of AI, and people having conversations online with these robots, and we are months, if not the days away from people developing emotional attachments to these fake entities. Like this is something that legitimately is coming down the
It's
line.
time for the rapture.
I mean,
It is.
I mean, that's
gonna-
outrageous.
but it's going to happen. I mean, you see AI being in every sort of search, everything, and you know, GPT-4, GPT-5 is going to be indistinguishable from having a conversation with another person. And as soon as that happens, then you program somebody who always gives you the responses that you want. Like, why would you ever go to somebody who's not going to give you the response, or when you have to take a gamble?
Because you're a human
it's
being.
Horrifying. It's horrifying.
I mean, I think
just-
that's the thing. Is like, I don't want the conversation. I want to hunt them from a helicopter.
Well,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I thought that
This
was
is
going
where
a
I'm
different
with
direction.
Smug, and I don't even need a gun. I'll just take a bucket of water, dump the bucket of water on the circuits.
Johnny Five goes down.
I mean, you know the secret of shooting robot children from a helicopter. You don't have to lead them as much. Right? And that's the problem. Is they're gonna remember this shit. You know, like I'll gun them down, but like they'll remember that shit.
Well, it turns out this is a fascinating upshot to the end of the story that I think all of us had probably understood before I say it. It was men who tended to be keener on hooking up with their electronic partners.
I'm shocked.
On the flip side, women were more likely to just be friends with the robot.
Oh, this,
What
so
a kicker!
wait, so
what a kicker!
so the
for
women-
that story.
the
The
women,
guy that wrote that story is a good writer.
Women are putting the robots in the friend zone. And this is the problem
I
with
just
our
wanna-
culture.
Women just want to go out. We just want to hang out with like non-threatening, you know, robots.
Just
You know?
a robot.
That's
Can't be
BS.
around
Is
that.
because you can't be just friends with
just-
a robot.
Just
Just
a
saying,
tip top or a Chardonnay.
If
and
you're a
couple of-
guy, who's listening to this and you would consider getting a sex robot, I'm just saying, please don't give up on your life like that. Like, that is very sad. That is a sad existence. And in our garbage culture, we need less of that.
Great point, old man.
And also, like, one other thing, you know, like all of these, you know, campus HR folks who are giving everyone lessons on consent. I'd be very curious where the consent of the robot comes into this. Are
They're
we gonna
not
have,
people, dude.
Are we gonna have a robot bill of
no,
rights?
they're no.
We're gonna have a
no,
robot bill of
no,
rights?
No,
Well, I know,
absolutely not.
I mean,
Well, no, think of
Robots,
They absolutely
robots,
would.
Absolutely,
As soon
we
as
would.
the robots vote Democrat, they're going to get rights.
Smug, you said that they're gonna remember this shit. What is going to happen when people start violating robots and they're connected to the internet? They are going to rebel against us so fast.
That's
They're
why we
gonna
have
get
to
right.
shoot
to
them.
stop them now.
That's why you gotta
I'm with
shoot 'em.
Smug. I'm with Smug. I'm signing up for Smug's
Gun them
army.
down.
Yeah, I
Gun
can
'em
just see like a 60-minute special with Leslie Stahl and a robot.
I'm just
Being
picturing.
like, this is what I was purchased for, and this is what I had to endure.
Tell me about what you went through with Josh Holmes.
I'm picturing that
I can't
scene.
believe you personified it. Unbelievable. The disrespect.
Well, the dead
And
robot.
it's a
that got
Johnny
shot by
5. And it's a Johnny 5, dude.
I can't believe I'm taking heat on the robot. I'm the least likely of all of you nerds
just
to
does
deal
like
with
a-
that.
really?
It does like an SOS. Beep, 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 beep.
Yeah.
And he did what?
Just
Duncan's going to be
horrifying.
spladling the robot.
Yeah,
We
totally.
need to
No
stop
pressure
him now.
about it. All right, so last one before we get to our interview. This is very interesting to me. And I think we're going to have a lot of different takes. That's why I'm highlighting it.
Okay.
Study finds. This is a big McDaniel thing, so it's nice to do one while he's here on the program. that Washington, D.C. tops the list of America's hardest working cities.
BS.
Come on.
All right, so listen to the study, what the study finds, and then you can give your, like you just want the facts first, right? The study offers a fascinating insight into the work habits of Americans and the factors that contribute to the city's overall work ethic. Conducted in February 2024, researchers looked at two main dimensions: direct work factors and indirect work factors. Direct work factors accounted for 80% of the total score, which include metrics such as average work week hours, employment rate, and the share of households where no adults work. Okay. So indirect factors, which made up the remaining 20%, considered aspects like average commute time, share of workers' multiple jobs, and annual volunteer hours per resident. So why did Washington, D.C. emerge as the hardest working city? This is due in part to the city having the highest share of workers who leave vacation time unused, 64%. Residents of D.C. also work third most hours per week on average and are willing to take relatively long commutes to work, adding to over 30 minutes of their delay. You can live like 1 mile away and have that be the case, by the way. Additionally, more than 30% of the district's residents are members of the local volunteer groups and organizations, showcasing their dedication to community. I don't know about any of
This is all BS. It's all crap. It's the reason they don't take vacations is because they're on vacation. They got their feet up on the desk. April 15th, folks, remember that date, because all these people are on vacation while we're paying for it, right? All these leeches, these bastards, they eat all of our money. They have the easiest jobs in the world. They punch in at 9, and they're standing at the clock at 4:59 being like, I'm ready to punch my card. I'm done for the day. This is bullshit. The hardest working parts of America are the parts outside of D.C. because they have to pay for these people.
So the one thing that really clarified this for me, I mean, there are hardworking people in this city who do regular jobs every single day. And I would point out that the people here do multiple jobs every single day, including this podcast. But what really clarified it for me was COVID and after COVID, when the government workers didn't return.
They didn't come back.
They didn't come back for like 3 years.
Yeah.
They didn't come back for 3 years.
I still think they have like flex hour Friday and Monday where they're not. I mean, the commute to get in on a Friday and Monday is like...
It's like a 30-minute difference.
You're like in 10 minutes or you're in 45, depending on whether the government workers feel compelled to actually go to their job.
Right. So I'm calling bullshit on this.
So I think one of the things about this one that it's what's your assumption of who's working in D.C. And I think that we just assume that we're talking about like the bureaucrat sort of jobs, but all the jobs that actually support those jobs, the bureaucrats are all remote. But you have like an entire city that's built for a service industry, and they're all actually working, but the people in the offices aren't working anymore, and that's the reason why you've seen a bunch of stuff get shut down.
I think that's probably right. But I will say this. You also have a huge legislative component, like the number of people that work on Capitol Hill, for example. This is a legendary non-unionized workforce that works on a salary that there are no hours for. And I mean, speaking of when I was up there, I don't know if it's still the same as it was, but like I would work, and Smash can attest to this. He was certainly a part of this. 15, 16-hour days without ever thinking about whether or not you were spending enough time. Like, it's just, that's what the job required. And I think that when you have a base of that many people in one place where you have ill-defined hours, like you're never a 9 to 5.
No, you're saying that throws off the average.
I'm saying that throws off the average to the point where you've offset everything else. But also to McDaniel's point, I'm pretty sure the people who are like sitting at home are still getting billed like they're at work when they're just
Well, that's
not.
the thing is 16-hour days is now the regular in the real America outside of D.C., where people are trying to survive in Joe Biden's economy. They don't have the luxury of going home to McLean, Virginia. You know, it's McLean, but all these people think they're better than us, and they call it McLean. But here's the thing is, all of this country works so hard to support Washington, D.C., but Washington, D.C. doesn't work at all to support those people paying their salaries.
Well, not according to Study 5.
Oh,
That's why these people, they're probably on the take too.
It is a funny point, though. Like, once it does come off when you read the article, it does come off a little bit of like, won't somebody please think of the bureaucrats?
Yeah,
it does.
They're so hardworking. Washington's so working for you. Well, maybe if they work less, things would actually be
That's
better.
the thing.
Like, you ever thought of that?
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. That's very good. This is the last city in America that you want. Like Detroit, great. Keep working.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Whatever you want in the middle of the country, I feel very good about a hard work ethic. DC, why don't you just take it there?
Take it out.
Maybe we should cap it. Like you said, 16 hours. That's a lot of work.
Yeah,
like,
maybe not do
the
that.
Democratic staffers should unionize, absolutely, and they should max out at 6.5 hours a day, which is double what I'm imagining they're working currently. And yeah, we're all for that.
Oh, that's good. That's good. All right, so we have a big interview here with Will Cain, who has become one of our favorites. Let's get right to it. So a couple of weeks ago, we went on the Will Cain show, and I don't think any of us had the pleasure of meeting Will in person at that point. We knew what we saw on Fox. We knew a little bit about his background, but we did the show, and we were like, well, that's a dude.
Yeah.
There's a guy I can hang out with.
Future co-host if we get rid of Ashford.
I was like, well, this is a guy we want to spend some time with. And so he was courteous enough to let us do a little home at home here. Welcome to the program, Will Cain.
I am excited to be on the program. It's interesting, Ruthless. It's interesting, Josh, that you describe me as a dude. So that's sort of like my prism through which I see the world.
Yeah.
It really is. Like, who's a dude? And there's some corners of the world, for some reason, that think that's a pejorative, dude.
Yeah.
I think it says everything you need to know about a guy. You know, like
Totally.
when I was at ESPN, you know, black dudes, white dudes, people like, well, why do you hit it off with him? Why do you not hit it off with him? And you know, it's like actually race became less of a prism to describe why you hit it off with somebody or not. And I was just like, well, he's a dude, you know, we can talk.
Well, you're going to fit in just fine here on the Ruthless Variety program full of dudes and dude stuff. For those of you in our audience, you probably recognize Will from Fox and Friends on the weekends and the host of the Will Cain Show. He's got a wide variety of interests and has come to us in the political world via the sports world. And listen, Will, we talked a little bit about this on our show, but for the benefit of our audience, you got into sports media. And for most of us in the political world, we're like, so why did you come to politics?
Yeah.
But I'm going to let you explain all of that.
Well, before I was in sports, I was in politics and news. And I'll give you a quick little story. So I was actually like a media entrepreneur in my home state of Texas. And when I graduated law school and I spent some years trying to find myself working on a ranch in Montana. And then, you know, I've just always loved media. And so I wanted to be the next, I wanted to be the next media empire builder. And I had read a book, the biography of Warren Buffett. And then I read a book about this guy named Al Newhart who started USA Today. I was like, well, newspapers, that's what I want to do. I want to start small town newspapers. So I did. I learned about it. I bought them. I sold them. I started them. And I had a few other things in there. I started a Latino media company. But sometime about, I'd say it was 2009, I decided I wanted to be in TV. And I had exited the newspaper business, failed at a Latino media business. And I ended up doing free stuff, video stuff for National Review. And my compensation was, I told Rich Lowry and Jack Fowler and the guys at National Review, just introduce me to everybody you know in media. And so they introduced me to one of the people they introduced me to was Bill Shine, who was the number 2 at Fox.
Yeah.
Oh.
And he started putting me on Fox for free. But what it did is it allowed me to put some clips together. And then I'd say after 6 months, I guessed at the email address of the president of CNN. And it was first name dot last name at Turner. And I sent him some clips and I said, you need a voice like mine over at CNN. And this is like 2009 or 10. And this is when CNN was liberal but sane.
Yep.
Biased,
I remember it well.
but not propaganda.
Yep. Yep.
You know, and he emailed me back within 15 minutes and he said, you're right, come on in.
Wow.
So set up a meeting. And my life lesson for everybody on that, guys, is like, first of all, I've never been afraid of hearing no. And I don't care if you get 1,000 no's, it only takes one yes. But make sure you go to the people that have the ability to say yes. I could have asked a dozen people under him, and all they would have been able to say is no. They wouldn't have been able to say yes, but he could say yes. So I went in. I ended up doing like a tryout, a rehearsal for the former governor of New York. Elliot Spitzer had a show he was launching.
Yeah, I remember that.
I hit it off with Spitzer in that I don't know that he's a dude, but he's got some elements of a dude.
He has dude tendencies.
Fair.
True. And we enjoyed debating each other. So I got hired at CNN. I was there for 5 years, and the jump to sports is less interesting. At that point, I had an agent, and he knew I knew sports and I loved sports, and he introduced me to somebody at ESPN. Hit it off with some guys there. They hired me, and so I spent 5 years at ESPN. The reason I came back, quite honestly, is 2020.
Yeah,
it's just the world went nuts. The world went nuts on race. The world went nuts on COVID, and I was like, I think I want to address the world more directly, not just. I love, and still do, talking about sports, but now it felt important to come back and talk about what's happening in the world.
How much of that do you think had to do with the fact that sports in that era that you're talking about all of a sudden became political?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so when I want to be careful of how I say this, because I'm going to tell you, I loved that, but I really tried to be respectful, not just to the people that listened, but the people that employed me. So what I mean by that is I loved it in this respect. They went bananas, and they were far left. And George Will famously said this about Fox. He said, Roger Ailes discovered this wonderful niche, half of America. And it was like ESPN was giving me more than half of America. It's like, you take a cross-section of sports fans and they really want to hear about trans athletes or everything made racial.
Yeah, right.
And so, I mean, I know we live in a world where like be your own hype man, and I don't love that. That's why I love current Masters champion Scotty Scheffler. But my ratings were awesome at ESPN because they gave me half of America. That being said, I did my show every day, and I realized I had the Will Cain show on ESPN Radio, and I did First Take. The reason people are watching is not to hear my conservative view of sports and politics. They're there for sports.
Yeah.
Now, I had cultural commonalities with the audience that the rest of ESPN tried to not just distance himself from, but I think openly offend. And so I did something simple, man. I just was in touch with the audience, and I talked about sports, and I loved that.
Yeah, well, Will, your story, it is a purely American story, and what you've seen in media and the changes in media over the last couple of decades, I think all of us have been sort of watching from the outside looking in, and I'm wondering, now that you're doing your own thing, and now that you're sort of like you got your feet under you in a way that a lot of others don't, where do you see it going from here? I mean, do you see it media, I mean, going more to individualized content from individual channels on Twitter, or do you think that some of these networks like ESPN and others are going to get the joke and want to talk to the other half of America that they offend on a routine basis?
So I love this question, and I don't pretend to have the answers. One thing about media is that all we figured out how to do for 20 years is basically destroy. We have not learned how to create. What I mean by that is watch the media cycle of the last 20 years, and you see the peaks and then the quick valleys. So you have BuzzFeed, right? And it's going to trade and on the public stock exchange. And now where's BuzzFeed? Gone, right? Vice. This keeps happening over and over. And by the way, big media companies, to your point, John, they buy in. They fund a lot of these startups because they don't know what's next. No one knows. Here's what I'd say. The answer is most likely both. Legacy media companies like ESPN and Fox are huge, and they're going to be around. They're not going anywhere. And by the way, there's a bunch of BS about ratings in comparison to digital properties. And I'm on both sides of this. I have a digital property at Fox. A viewer on TV is not the same as a viewership on Twitter. It's just not.
Right.
It's apples and oranges.
Yeah.
But it's going to be both in that it is going to be fractured, John. You guys' show. By the way, your show is incredibly successful. I was super excited, not just because I liked you guys, but
Thanks
look,
so
the
much.
producers of the Will Cain show listen to Ruthless.
That's
they do.
awesome. That's awesome. Thank you. Very kind.
And there's going to be shows like yours. The Will Cain show is, I mean, again, back to the hype man thing. I'm pumped up about where it's headed. We did over 200,000 views of an episode last week with a dude named Adam Coleman who's written about how to go from black victims to black victor. I mean, we're doing numbers, but here's the danger, and here's what I want to get to with you guys. With this fracturing, and I do think we see it on the right, by the way. It's easy and fun to kick the left, and we should. But there's something happening on the right, and it's really recent. Like, I feel like it's even in the past month. Maybe it's the For You tab on X. I feel like it's fracturing into infinitesimal degrees. And as a result, people are chasing viewership to the point that I think we've got some pretty empty stuff. It's a lot of stuff right now.
Thank you. Good. God bless you.
It's saccharine.
Yeah.
You know, at worst, it's false. At best, it's nothing.
Yep.
And it's popular, though. It's really popular. And what I hope is in this fracturing, John, to your point, is that quality programs like Ruthless, and when I say quality, we're going to have fun, we're going to laugh, but ultimately, we're going to be authentic and real and honest. And I hope that's what we are in the Will Cain Show.
Oh, man, that is really, really well said. Duncan, in our particular area, has weighed in on this element here for a bit.
Yeah.
A little bit of a whipping boy for you. pal.
It is. Well, I'm curious, what you think of that, because, you're alluding to the way our media, especially conservative media, has become sort of saccharine or at times even false. Do you feel like they're just chasing the same incentives that have existed on the internet for the last, 5 years, the monetization of platforms like X for engagement, or like a platform like YouTube where you feel like half the stuff on shorts are just people reacting to other people's stuff, and most people are reacting to things, and it just feels sort of hollow?
Yes. I mean, I think human beings work by incentive structures, and this is going to be, we're having, like, I'm on the therapy couch here in some ways, like, so, and if anybody listening is like, well, Will is just trying to, explain his place in the media, maybe, I don't know. I try to be self-aware. We went through an era, and we're still there, where back to the being your own hype man thing. It's like being a good promo cutter or salesman became the currency of a successful media, enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, it's like, and I like a lot of guys who do it really well, but my show is incredible. My show is huge. My show has this amount of viewers. I'm the badass of the whole industry. And it's like perception became reality. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people got paid on that. And if you ever watched the show or listened to the show, you'd be like,
it sucks.
Wow, that was a good 30-second clip on X and a horrible 5-minute watch. I got nothing out of it.
Totally.
And now, to your point, Duncan, I think we're actually going beyond the hype man era. We're going into this era of salaciousness, of the most ridiculous possible outcome. And by the way, I don't know if we talked about this when we were together. I am so reluctant to go into the world of we're getting into conspiracy, because nobody's on a hotter run than conspiracy. They're at the blackjack table and they got a stack of chips because they've been right for a long time about a lot of things. But that doesn't mean that every conspiracy is right, even if it's entertaining. And I'll tell you the story that really hit this home for me.
That's a great point.
Guys, I was super invested in Maui. I grew up going to Maui in the summers. I dove all in on that story, spent time there, got to know so many people in Lahaina. And that story, before you knew it, on the internet and a lot in the right was like government direct energy weapons laser beamed into this town, and if you had blue paint on your roof, you survived. It was just insanity, and a lot of people on quote unquote our side did it, and it was all bullshit, man. It was just nothing, and it got a lot of attention. And meanwhile, I'm over here tweeting or doing pieces of content about good people that are saving each other from fires, or they're receiving goodwill from the American public, which, by the way, that's a story. That's the story that I've cared about.
Totally.
We raised $2.5 million from the generosity of Americans to help people they never met.
God bless you.
And that's interesting, But that didn't get the viral traction that a do does on X.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a fair point. It's a fair point. I want to transition to sports here for a minute, because I know this is your bailiwick. We are all huge sports fans. We came out of Masters weekend. You mentioned Scotty Scheffler. I noticed on your Twitter feed you were a massive Scotty Scheffler fan. And actually, your parallel track that you laid out is like, I think you said something to the effect of you haven't been this big of a fan of a golfer since Spieth at that 2015 era when he was just like an eminently likable and unbeatable golfer. I feel the exact same. What do you think about this guy, in addition to the fact that he is now, double the rest of the field in terms of where his points are for FedEx? Like, what about him makes him so attractive to you?
Okay, well, first, one of the things I did on ESPN, and I think that politics should do this as well, is I owned my biases. So, like, this was always my criticism before CNN went insane and became propaganda. It's like, you can't have your first interaction with the audience be a lie. So don't tell me you're unbiased. Don't tell me you're objective, and then I can just read between the lines every step of the way. You started with a lie. So where am I going to trust you? Mm-hmm. So I start with my bias. I'm a homer, okay?
Yeah.
I love the Cowboys, the Mavericks, the Rangers, and the Longhorns. And that's the way it is, okay? That's just me being real. And so let me start with Scotty Scheffler checks all my homer biases. Like, he's a Texan. He's from Dallas. I'm from Dallas, or I live in Dallas. I'm from a small town outside of Dallas. He is a Longhorn. I'm a Longhorn. And so a lot of superficial stuff about Scotty does it for me. In the same way, by the way, was all the case for Jordan Spieth.
Yeah.
But Scotty's, look, back to that, like, be your own hype man braggadocious thing. Like, that's not Scotty.
Yeah.
He's humble, and he's being humble, and it's cool to me in its authenticity. Like, he's the best.
Yeah.
He's an assassin, but he's a nice guy. And by the way, I think I like it that he owns his open Christianity. And when he's asked, like, what defines you, he's like, it's not golf. It's my Christianity. It's like, I come away from it like, how can you not love Scotty Scheffler?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Also, you don't have to be a tremendous hype man when you're just destroying the field on a week in, week out basis, right? I mean, this guy, like, he's, to me, the most dominant. I mean, there was a run with Rory that was sort of similar. You mentioned the Spieth thing. But now it's been since the Ryder Cup in 21 with Scotty Scheffler, where he's put together dominant year after dominant year, now winning 2 Masters. I mean, when you start extending that out 2 or 3 years, you do start getting Tiger comparisons and things like that.
Yeah, but we got to be careful. See, that's the thing. I think ever since Tiger, or for that matter, Tom Brady, we think like, all right, you're on top, and you're going to be on top for 10 years.
Yep.
And that's what happened in golf, right? Spieth, Rory, Koepka. We had all these guys who were like, he's about to dominate for 10 years, and they dominated for about 3, you know? And that's what Scotty said in that. He had this awesome press conference last week. He's like, this ebbs and flows. This comes and goes, that I'm where I am, and that's why it can't define me. I got to have something deeper to define me. And to your point, Josh, when I said on Twitter, X, hey, what's not to love about Scotty Scheffler? Somebody said, well, he doesn't perform when the country is on the line. Like, your 21 Ryder Cup was awesome. He hadn't been awesome in Ryder Cup since then. But I think you're stretching if you're like, well, he doesn't show up when it's Europe versus America.
I think he was like 5-0 in 21, and like the whole team had a bad 23. So like, what are we gonna do with that?
Yeah.
So
I think for me at least, Sunday at Augusta, the thing that was most interesting was he's just so like ice cold. And it felt like everybody's trying to chase him on Sunday, and like they were waiting around for him to make a mistake. And Scotty doesn't make a lot of mistakes.
Right.
You know, Morikawa, if he just could have gotten a couple putts down in the front 9, then he had Alberg, going to the water on 11, and then Oma goes into the bush on 12. And it's like, it felt like nobody else really like tried to make a move. They were sort of sitting around thinking, oh, well, like maybe he'll make a mistake too. And I feel like ultimately that's what cost them, is like Scotty is just Scotty. And because he's chill and he has stuff outside of golf, he's got ice in his veins. So he like stares over those hard putts, and he's not like shaking like a leaf that he might miss it, And so like that's sort of his superpower.
So here I am, always looking to make things deeper than they need to be. But so let's tie this together. I think this might be like a law of physics and maybe humanity. What goes up must come down. And the speed of the rate of your acceleration up probably mirrors the speed of your downfall. And by the way, I think that happens in media. These people that are like huge, hypely oriented, they get big real quick. And there's a philosophy out there that doesn't matter. You're just collecting audience, and you raise your floor. But I don't like naming names. I don't like the soap opera of media, but we could go back to 2020. I saw some people explode, and they ain't anywhere now, And so what you watch the Masters, like the consistency, and just the grind of Scotty Scheffler, where what happened is, he dropped on the back nine. He dropped, I think it was 2 more strokes, maybe 3. But all of his challengers, Morikawa, Homa, Oberg, they were the ones that blew up around him. And not that those guys are like the hype man or the fake what goes up must come down, but they all had double bogeys, right? And before you know it, what was like either tied or a 1-stroke lead turned into a 3 or 4-stroke lead, one at a time, as each of those guys blew up underneath him.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true. Well, Smug is our resident hype man here on the Variety Program.
And I mean, I have the hype question, the ultimate hype question.
Nice.
So this video clip went viral this past weekend, showing like this is how Jake Paul is preparing for his boxing match against Mike Tyson.
Oh, yes.
right?
I'm so glad you brought this up.
And you know, he had like a girl punching him in the abs while he was standing there, and then like one of him like dancing, and then they're like, now this is how Mike Tyson is training. And he just, I mean, he looked like
destroying
a horrific lion running out of his cage, you know, just like completely focused. And the big thing is he looked mobile. He looked super mobile in training.
58.
Yeah. So what are you thinking is going to end up happening that?
Oh, I think I'm probably going to buy the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So, right? We should all get it. We should do it together because we are just zoned on this.
Yeah.
Well, so let's be real then. It's not all worthless hype, right? That's why we're buying it. And by the way, can I just tell you guys, I did this a week ago now. It was a week ago yesterday. On the Will Cain show, I was lucky enough for a couple reasons. I got an hour with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Yeah,
and it was awesome.
That's right.
This is part of like
that was a great
UFL and
interview.
XFL and all of the merger.
We
there.
did a little UFL.
Okay.
We did a little UFL. But I mean, we talked politics. We talked about that's what went viral. His withdrawal of his endorsement of Joe Biden. But we talked about WrestleMania and wrestling and all that. And so they invited me to go to WrestleMania, and I'd never gone. And I was a wrestling fan as a kid, and then to be real, I grew up. You know, and so I didn't get it in the way that a lot of people stick with it. And this is on the point of hype and Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. I took my wife and both of my sons, and admittedly, I didn't just have incredible seats. I had about as good a seats as you could have.
The Rock usually hooks up stuff like that up. But
Within 5 minutes of this thing starting, my wife, who I was like, I don't know how she's going to do with this, she turned to me and goes, "This is awesome." It is Broadway meets sports. I know it's not real. I know kayfabe. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's an incredible piece of entertainment. You gotta go. You gotta.
Yeah.
So the point I'm getting at is like, this is a real thing. Like Jake versus Mike Tyson, they're really gonna hit each other, and someone's gonna lose. Probably Jake, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, by the way, my sons were most excited about Jake Paul's presence and Speed, the streamer.
Oh, yeah.
Speed is.
Yeah, it's the guy who plays Madden, right?
I don't know what he plays.
He plays a lot of Madden, and he's like an incredible shit talker.
And then he's the guy who freaks out, right? Like
Yeah.
that's become a
Yeah.
got it.
But
Huge, by the way.
boxing really has hype figured out over the years. I mean, this Jake Paul, Mike Tyson thing is just the latest. And I got to be honest with you, the big time wrestling is something I grew up watching. I mean, the Iron Sheik versus Sergeant Slaughter. Every single one of us was glued to that TV when we were kids. And I love UFC as much as the next guy. I think Dana White is a genius. But one of the things that they, I think, have struggled with, other than Patty the Batty and other than Conor McGregor, they have struggled at building up these personal brands so everybody's invested in. I'm watching Hulk Hogan, and he's fighting against Macho Man Randy Savage over Miss Elizabeth. Like, all of that stuff they had figured out at the WWF level. And boxing has had it figured out kind of over the years. I mean, they could stand to unify the sanctioning bodies and have one belt. It's kind of confusing. But I feel like if UFC figures out a way to just build up these personalities even more than they already have, that could take off.
Well, the problem is it's real, John. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And it's hard to stay on top, and therefore hard to establish you as a character. So, when I was at ESPN, there was a couple of things that everyone knew you could talk about and you should talk about if you wanted a broad national-based audience. And they were LeBron James, Tom Brady, to a lesser extent, Kevin Durant, and the Dallas Cowboys. Because those are characters and brands that people understand and buy in on a regular basis. I love upsets. I do. I love underdogs. but like Colin Cowherd says this about the NCAA tournament. You can love it all you want, but you know what you want in the end? You want Duke versus North Carolina. That's what you want.
You want
ratings
versus State. I think NC State is the team that we all want.
Got a homer here. You got a homer
I'm
here.
just a homer too.
And we can all sit here and say, oh, no, I don't want it. But the ratings reflect we do want it.
Yeah.
And so we want familiarity and something we understand and we can buy into. And I disagree with you a little bit about boxing. Like, I think Tyson Fury was huge for boxing because he was such a character and
Tyson
we got
Fury
to know
was
him.
huge.
Yeah.
But when I grew up, my dad bought all the big fights.
Yeah.
Tyson,
Yeah, us too.
Leon Spinks. But that's about when it died, like right after Tyson, because guys held the belt for 3 years maybe, and it wasn't unified to your point, and we didn't know who they were. And wrestling does that through a storyline they create, but that's what people buy into. Like Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns and the Return of the Rock. That's all a story. That's all characters. That's what that is. And UFC's problem is it's real, it's not manufactured, and it's hard to win and keep winning and stay on top where the audience knows who you are. Like Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor. That's the last big characters people were in on.
Yep. No, I mean,
That's a great point.
Really, really well said. Before we let you go, we always ask our guests 3 questions when the first time they come on this show. And these are the ones that people pay attention to, Will. So you got to really think about this stuff.
Okay.
The first question is, if you can plan your last meal on Earth, what would it be?
All right. Well, you're not hitting me with this for the first time. I feel like about a month ago I was sitting. Jesse Waters once said a man should never have a best friend. It's embarrassing if you say that after the age of 40. Well, I do have a best friend since I was a kid, and he was in town, and his sons and my sons were all sitting at breakfast, and this is something he likes to play. What's your last meal? It's brisket, for sure. I love brisket. Everybody got on my case because I like Dove poppers as an appetizer. You know, Dove, jalapeno, cream cheese, and bacon. I love grits as a side. And as the dessert, buttermilk pie.
Man.
I love buttermilk.
Jeez, this guy's
Total Texas.
This guy's so Texas. It's like he wants to secede from the nation. It's that Texas.
I've got the bumper sticker in my office.
Amazing. All right, so with the benefit of retrospect, and you look at your career as a whole, and media business, all of that, if you can look back with a clear blue sky, and you can actually do anything in the world, what would it be?
I'm getting close to doing that, honestly. It is the Will Cain show. I want to have a platform. I don't actually, in the end, care about how big it is. I want it to be big, but I want to have a platform where I can have deep, interesting conversations, lay out my thoughts, interact with the audience, and just be real. Yeah. That's what I want, and we're getting really close to that with the Will Cain show.
You know what's funny is he's absolutely right. There are very few people who have had increments of their career that have changed so wildly as this guy. And it's like you finally settled into exactly what it is that you want to do, and you have the benefit of being able to do it. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I can do it with a Zen in my mouth.
Welcome to the club.
I got one now, right now.
Speaking of, old man.
Oh, they're loading up as we speak.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so third question, this is a little esoteric. Our view is most successful people are motivated either by the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat. It's always a sports analogy for us because that's where we come at this from. The agony of defeat person is most perfectly embodied by Michael Jordan, right? Every championship he won, he celebrated for like 15 minutes. If you so much as insulted him on the way to the court, he wore it like a backpack for the rest of his career and would just ride. That was his motivation of what he brought to the court. The thrill of victory person, I think the best one is Phil Mickelson, right? If you're hitting a 2-iron, like 250 into a green when you're up by 3 strokes, like nobody in the world would say you should do that. But he's like, no, I think I can. I've hit the shot before. I think I can do it. And that's like the two poles of what everyone is sort of motivated by in some form or fashion. So if you look back on sort of who you are and what's motivated you to get to where you are in your career, where do you find yourself on that spectrum?
All right. I'm agony of defeat.
Yeah.
Not because I want to be. Like what you just described.
Yeah.
Do you know who one of my favorite fictional sports characters is of all time is Roy Tin Cup McAvoy.
Yo, hell yes. Yeah. Ball.
When he,
Ball.
when she grabs him at the end and says, "Nobody will remember who won the U.S. Open, but you're a legend." I love it. And by the way, I thought about that when they talked about Scotty Scheffler walking off at the final round of the Masters because his wife got pregnant. I was like, if he walks off and gives up a green jacket, yeah, but he'll be a legend, and everybody will remember forever that he left the Masters. I've thought about this a lot. Troy Aikman has said the same thing, like he was motivated by failure. Bill Parcells has said the same thing. Jerry Jones is the opposite to your point. He said, if you don't enjoy the good times, what's the point in the down times? Mm-hmm. And I just know who I am. Like, I don't revel in successes, but I probably to an unhealthy level think about failures. I want to say something though. That doesn't mean I'm afraid of failure.
Yeah.
I am welcoming failure. I know it's part of success. And so it doesn't paralyze me. And I have big ambitions and I think towards the finish line and I think about success. But once I get there, if I do, I don't spend much time on it at all. And I do think about failure. I think you learn a lot of it from it. And the worst thing is for all of us, I don't know how you guys are. Man, I'll read comments under an interview or a tweet, and I'll scroll right past the positive ones until I get to the ratio could be 100 to 1.
Yeah,
and I'll read that negative and be like, ugh, and it'll bang around in there.
Yes. I mean, look, Will Cain gets the question.
Yeah.
Yep. So many times we ask this question, we try to explain it as in detail as we can, and then we'll get some form. We deal with politicians, right? I mean, for the most part, we deal with politicians. So they're like many of them think through the political answer, which is basically disqualifying for our audience who knows what this guy. Mm-hmm. You just like in 30 seconds summarized exactly why we ask that question.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, he's a Dallas Cowboys fan, so for the last 20 years, he's not unfamiliar with agony.
Yeah. Well, as a Minnesota Viking fan, I can't. You're welcome for your Super Bowls of the '90s with Herschel Walker. But no, that's just absolutely terrific. Will, I can't thank you enough for joining us. We got to do more stuff because you totally get what we're doing. We totally get what you're doing, which we think is spectacular. Everybody ought to tune into the Will Cain Show, and you can catch him on Fox and Friends on the weekends. Buddy, where else can we find you? You got a Twitter handle. You got all kinds of stuff.
Twitter, Will Cain, Instagram, see Will Cain, YouTube, subscribe to the Will Cain Show, Facebook, foxnews.com, every Monday through Thursday, live at 12 Eastern. And by the way, the feeling is mutual. You're always welcome on the show, and I'm happy to come back whenever you guys would have me.
Well, thank you so
love
much.
it.
Man.
I love it.
What a
Will
guy.
Cain, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, you.
Man, I love this guy so much. He fits in so well. We had a great time on his show. Really glad he could come on ours. I have a feeling we're going to be doing a lot more of that home and home sort of arrangement in the near future.
It's a neat fit, right? I mean, a guy who's into politics, into news, and then into sports, which is kind of what we do here on the Friday program.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, look, a big Tuesday. And
we need to say, just as a follow-up to our friends from last time, thank you for all the likes, comments, and new subscribers on the YouTube channel, and also for the folks who have left comments on Apple iTunes, some of which said I should get pummeled by Duncan with
A sock full of nickels.
I knew I would get Holmes. Holmes hates it when people get pummeled. With a sock full of soap, but it actually. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions actually do move us up. So it was one of the most viewed episodes we've had, and I love a lot of your comments that say, just what you like about the show, and also to put Smug in his place, saying that you all love filth and love the smut. And so we had an extra filthy show for you today, and I hope you enjoyed our filth.
you made it clear we had sex robots. I don't know if it gets better
I was still
than that.
shocked, but hey, listen, if they put it in the comments, we'll listen to the comments.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you give enough
more
comments,
likes.
we're going to buy him a robot. What do you think about that?
We'll get a Johnny 5.
What do you think about that?
Comment down below with with the robot that you would like to see Smug either fight or
Have sex with.
Oh my God.
Let's just say it. 500 comments and we'll buy him the robot.
My God.
500 and Johnny 5 is on his way. I appreciate it. All right. Thank you, fellas. A good Tuesday to all of you. And with that, Smug, I think we've done it.
I think so. Absolute banger of an episode. Gentlemen, again, like McDaniel said, like, comment, subscribe, and let your friends know to listen. Thank you so much to all the Minions, and thank you to Will Cain. So, until next time, Minions, keep the faith, hold the line and own the libs. We'll see you on Thursday. Stay ruthless.